Hello, my name is Ethan Morgan, and for 11 years, I carried our family's restaurant on my back. I built menus, managed staff, and fought for every contract only to watch my parents hand the CEO title to my younger brother because he had an MBA. The day they crowned him, I walked away. That's when they lost the $850,000 deal I had secured. If this kind of story resonates with you, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep telling the stories that matter. Let's begin. The glass trophy slipped from my fingers, shattering on the boardroom floor as I realized my parents had crowned my younger brother CEO. The sound echoed against the mahogany panels like a gunshot, but no one turned. Their eyes stayed glued to the projection screen where Caleb's slides glowed with polished confidence. Riverside Ember Expansion Strategy. CEO Caleb Morgan. My throat tightened. I'd spent the morning buried in preparations for the restaurant's 15th anniversary celebration, double-checking menus and seating plans. I arrived only to find the annual meeting had been moved up without me. Dad's voice cut the silence warm but dismissive. "You're late, Olivia. We've already started." I scanned the table. Richard smiling proudly. Evelyn, her fingers interlaced, eyes shining with anticipation. Caleb at the head, his charcoal suit crisp, his stance claiming territory that had been mine for 11 years. Transition is effective immediately. Caleb announced smoothly, clicking to the next slide. The anniversary tomorrow is the perfect moment to announce new leadership. Transition. The word curdled in my mouth. Mom leaned forward, her tone falsely gentle. "Honey, we've transferred operational control to Caleb. We wanted to surprise you." My pulse roared in my ears. Just last week, I'd stood under spotlights at the Portland Culinary Excellence Awards accepting Seafood Dish of the Year for my king crab with tangerine glaze. Yet when I placed that trophy in front of them at dinner, Dad had only swirled his wine and said, "It's nice, Olivia, but not scalable." Tonight, that same award lay in shards at my feet. "I built this restaurant," I whispered. No one heard. Caleb's lips curved into a knowing smirk. "See, Dad. Too emotional. I told you she wouldn't understand business." Richard cleared his throat using that paternal tone that carried more weight than words. "You're fantastic in the kitchen, sweetheart, but Caleb understands growth. You'll stay on as head chef." Head chef. As if I hadn't doubled our revenue, built marketing campaigns, secured partnerships. As if my sweat, my nights hunched over supplier lists, and glowing reviews meant nothing. Something inside me stilled. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my ring of restaurant keys, and set them on the table. The metallic clink rang louder than any applause I'd ever received. "I'm not just your chef. I built this brand." Caleb sighed theatrically. "And this is why she can't lead. Too attached. Too personal." Mom's voice sharpened. "Enough. Caleb has an MBA. He knows what he's doing." It hit me then clearer than the broken glass around my shoes. To them, I had never been a partner. Only the worker, the reliable daughter who kept the flame lit while they dreamed bigger dreams for the son who visited during summers with business textbooks under his arm. I pushed back from the table. "Maybe you're right. Maybe Caleb should take over. But when you realize what you've thrown away, don't expect me to fix it." I walked out, leaving my keys and the shards of my trust on the polished floor. That night, the anniversary banners still stacked in my office mocked me with their cheer. I'd come back only to grab my apron. Instead, the bluish glow of Caleb's laptop drew my eye. He'd left it open, the screen glaring with the West Shore Grand Hotel's logo. My breath snagged. I stepped closer, hands trembling as I scrolled. "Dear Mr. Morgan, we acknowledge your cancellation of Thursday's contract meeting. While disappointed, we look forward to your streamlined, cost-effective alternatives to Chef Olivia's proposal." The words blurred. My knees weakened against the desk. 6 months of negotiation of menu trials, supplier cost sheets, and tasting sessions, all gone in a single email I never wrote. $850 and dollars, a quarter of our annual revenue, dismissed as if it were a bad recipe. I read further, the nausea rising. "Regarding your inquiry about modifying the award-winning seafood offerings, we are open to alternatives provided they maintain the excellence we experienced during our initial tasting with Chef Olivia." A cold clarity sliced through me. Caleb hadn't been asking questions about my tangerine glaze recipe out of admiration he had been stealing, plotting to gut everything I'd built and replace it with hollow efficiency. My hand hovered over the laptop lid. I wanted to slam it shut. Erase the words, but I couldn't. They were branded into me betrayal in black and white. On Caleb's laptop, an email glowed. Dear Mr. Morgan, we confirm your cancellation of the $850,000 catering partnership meeting. The words had burned themselves into my memory, echoing long after I closed the lid. By the next morning, fury steadied me more than coffee ever could. He hadn't just betrayed me. He had sabotaged the lifeline I'd spent half a year weaving together. 19 March, Riverside Ember's private dining room. The mahogany table stretched beneath the soft light, but instead of celebration, the air smelled of tension and cheap ambition. Caleb's voice rolled smooth as he pitched his vision to Marcus, our fishmonger, and Eleanor, whose produce had colored my plates for a decade. The premium seafood orders are unsustainable, Caleb declared, sliding glossy folders across the table. We'll transition to national distributors who guarantee consistency. Marcus's brow furrowed. His hands, rough from years on deck, clutched the folder like a lifeline. Chef Olivia chose our catch because it's same-day fresh. Your customers will taste the difference. Caleb's smile barely twitched. Customers don't care about boats, Marcus. They care about value. I pushed the door open before I could stop myself. 3 pairs of eyes turned toward me. Caleb's smile faltered. Olivia, this is a private meeting. With my suppliers, I shot back, moving to stand behind Marcus and Eleanor, the people who built this restaurant's reputation alongside me. He straightened, pretending control. My sister struggles to adjust to the new direction. Please direct all questions to me going forward. What direction? I yanked the folder from Marcus. My eyes traced the sterile pages, menus stripped bare. My king crab with tangerine glaze gone. The cedar plank salmon with huckleberry reduction erased. Replaced by lifeless lines, grilled seafood platter. Fish of the day. You're standardizing the menu, I hissed. We're creating scalable systems. Caleb corrected, his MBA diction filling the room like poison. Mom and Dad agree it's the right move. Eleanor's voice quivered with contained anger. Those tomatoes Olivia built her recipes on my southeastern field gets morning sun, afternoon shade. That's why they're sweeter. You think bulk orders from Portland Supply can replace that? Caleb leaned forward, tone steel. Volume discounts improve margins. Nostalgia doesn't pay bills. Marcus slammed the folder shut. Without Riverside Ember's orders, I lose $40,000 in supply each month. One of my boats won't survive the season. My stomach twisted. He wasn't just erasing my legacy, he was gutting theirs. I met Caleb's eyes steady. You're not just killing flavor. You're killing livelihoods. His jaw tightened. Business requires tough decisions. I raised my voice so Marcus and Eleanor could hear. No, business requires trust, and you've just burned it. Caleb waved a dismissive hand. If they don't adapt, we'll find others. Marcus pushed back his chair, the scrape harsh against hardwood. Eleanor rose with him, her hands trembling but her gaze firm. Caleb didn't flinch. He ushered them toward the door like disposable tools. Something inside me snapped. I grabbed another folder, flung it open. Generic dishes, imported shrimp, frozen halibut. Even sides reduced to tasteless substitutes. My signature recipes deleted like typos. This isn't efficiency, I said, my voice shaking but sharp. It's sabotage, and it will destroy everything Riverside Ember stands for. He smirked as though I were a child. Passion doesn't scale, Olivia. Get used to it. I pressed the folder flat against the table, leaning close enough to feel the static in his arrogance. You've traded excellence for mediocrity, and soon you'll pay for it. For a heartbeat, silence stretched. Then Caleb turned away, signaling the meeting over. But as Marcus and Eleanor left, they didn't follow his lead. They lingered near the hall, catching my arm. Eleanor's whisper burned hotter than any applause I'd ever known. If you open your own kitchen, we'll follow you. Within 3 weeks, Riverside Ember's reservations had plummeted by 28%. 3 corporate events canceled, and Portland Plate published the review, Has Riverside Ember lost its flame? The words stung worse than Caleb's smug grin. They quoted lines that twisted the knife further, once award-winning dishes replaced by chain restaurant blandness. I could almost hear the glass trophy shattering again, only this time the echo came from a citywide stage. The fallout was everywhere. Longtime guests who used to greet me by name now left one-star reviews. Where's the chef quality gone? Yelp's once pristine 4.8 rating had collapsed to 3.2. Customers noticed. Critics noticed. And worst of all, Caleb noticed. Though he pretended otherwise, walking the floor in tailored suits, shaking hands with hollow confidence while the kitchen smoldered behind him. I saw the rot firsthand. When I slipped back into the prep area one evening to retrieve my knives, the smoker I'd imported from Tennessee was gone. The precision thermometers I depended on, gone. My mandolin slicer gone. In their place, 3 identical deep fryers lined up like soldiers, their metal gleam reflecting Caleb's obsession with efficiency. Daniel found me staring at them, hands clenched at my sides. He had maintenance lock your gear in storage, he said softly. Said fryers could carry the new appetizer menu faster. I laughed a bitter, humorless sound. Fast food in disguise. That's his vision. Daniel didn't answer. He just slipped something onto my station, a single tangerine, perfectly round, resting on a folded note. I opened it with trembling fingers. Your recipes? Your vision. They can't replace you. The citrus scent rose sharp and sweet, cutting through the grease in the air. My chest tightened. I thought of the glaze Caleb had begged me to explain weeks ago, pretending admiration while plotting theft. He could mimic ingredients, but he couldn't counterfeit devotion. At home, the silence of my one-bedroom apartment pressed in. I cleared the tiny kitchen table, spread out my leather-bound journal, and began writing page after page of recipes, techniques, supply contacts, plating notes. Not just dishes, systems, standards, a manifesto of everything Riverside Ember no longer valued. My pen moved faster than my grief-filling margins with sketches of potential spaces concepts for open kitchens, even notes on neighborhood demographics. Meanwhile, news trickled back from the restaurant. Staff whispered about Caleb yelling behind closed doors when reservations kept falling. He blamed servers for selling the old favorites to hard cooks for not executing his streamlined menu correctly. But I knew the truth. Guests weren't tasting mistakes, they were tasting mediocrity. One night, Daniel called after a brutal service. 3 tables walked out before entrees. A couple asked if you were coming back. Caleb told them you'd been difficult to work with. His voice cracked with disgust. They didn't buy it. They said, she was the reason we came here. I stared at my walls bare except for a single photo of the opening night 11 years ago. I'd been grinning flour on my cheek, my parents' hands resting proudly on my shoulders. Now those same hands had pushed me aside. For Caleb. For an MBA. For expansion dreams that were already collapsing. Something inside me shifted. The fight to hold on to Riverside Ember had ended. There was nothing left to salvage. If I wanted my fire back, I had to build it myself. I dug into the drawer of my desk, searching past old receipts and broken pencils until my fingers brushed cardstock. A business card slightly bent at the corner. Marianne Wells Restaurant Properties. Beneath her name, a note she'd scrawled when we met months ago. Still space in the Pearl District. My heart thudded as I turned the card over in my hand. The choice was no longer between staying or leaving. The restaurant I knew was already gone. The only choice left was whether to reclaim my future. Olivia pulled Marianne Wells's business card. Still space in the Pearl District. She dialed the number. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't staring at Riverside Ember's decline. I was standing inside the dusty Pearl District space that could become my future. Sunlight poured through high windows, striking motes of dust that swirled above exposed brick and concrete floors. The air smelled of abandonment, but to me it smelled like possibility. Marianne Wells adjusted her blazer, her heels echoing on the bare floor. This space has been vacant for almost a year, she said. Landlord's eager. If you want it, you can get favorable terms. I ran my palm along the brick wall, feeling grit cling to my skin. I could see an open kitchen gleaming under pendant lights, copper pans suspended like trophies, communal tables buzzing with the rhythm of fire and laughter. Daniel's tangerine flashed in my memory. Your vision. They can't replace you. The echo of footsteps broke my reverie. Daniel appeared at the doorway, tie-loosened eyes shining. He handed me an envelope. My resignation, effective immediately. I froze. Daniel, Caleb will blacklist you. Oregon's non-compete laws are toothless, he said with a grin. I checked. He can't stop me. His voice hardened. I won't keep frying frozen shrimp while he dismantles everything you built. If you're starting something, I'm in. The weight in my chest lifted slightly. I wasn't alone. 2 days later, I sat across from Jason Mercer in his investment office, a glass tower downtown. His reputation preceded him, strategic calculating, but with an eye for potential. I slid a thick portfolio across the polished desk, projected revenue models, supplier contracts, sample menus. Jason flipped through page after page, pausing at a spread of my king crab with tangerine glaze. You kept the local supply chains. Marcus with seafood, Eleanor with produce. They're not just suppliers, they're part of the story. Customers taste that authenticity. He studied me, then leaned back. Most chefs talk about artistry. You're talking about systems. You have both. He tapped the LOI form on his desk. I'll back you. Relief flooded me as I signed the letter of intent. It was only the beginning. Next would come the term sheet, then the master services agreement with contractors. But it was a start. That night, Marcus and Eleanor met me at a quiet cafe. Marcus clasped my hand, calloused and firm. We lost 40 grand last month thanks to Caleb's distributors. If you need supply, we'll deliver. No questions asked. Eleanor nodded fiercely. Your hearth will be our hearth. I swallowed hard gratitude pressing at my throat. These weren't just allies. They were my foundation. May rolled in with the scent of rain on pavement as I stood once more in the Pearl District space, this time signing the lease. Marianne slid the documents across the counter with a satisfied smile. Congratulations, you're officially a tenant. I wrote the name across my sketchbook that night in bold, steady strokes, Olivia's hearth. Days blurred into construction schedules, equipment orders, branding sessions, copper signage ordered, logo drafts refined. Each decision stitched a future that was wholly mine. Riverside Ember's reviews continued to nosedive headlines whispering of mismanagement and cancellations. Yet, while Caleb scrambled, I built quietly, brick by brick. When Jason visited mid-May to inspect progress, he clasped my shoulder. You're not just ready to open a restaurant. You're ready to lead. He placed another contract before me, conditional agreement with West Shore Grand Executives for exclusive corporate catering contingent on a tasting. I signed my pen steady. The deal I'd lost was finding its way back to me on my terms. As I left the site that evening, my phone buzzed. Eleanor's voice crackled through the line, urgent but alive with hope. West Shore wants a private tasting. With you, not Caleb. My parents stood in the half-built dining room of Olivia's hearth. Caleb silent behind them, dust from the unfinished floor clinging to their polished shoes. The sound of hammers and saws echoed from the kitchen where workers fitted gas lines, yet the air felt heavier than any construction noise. Olivia Dad began, voice softened into a plea I had never heard before. Come home. Riverside Ember is still the family's legacy. It needs you. I studied their faces, creased with worry, not pride. Mom clasped her purse like it was a lifeline. Behind them, Caleb shifted eyes, darting to the drywall as though hoping to disappear into it. You want me back now? I asked evenly. After stripping me of my title, canceling my contracts, deleting my menus. Business is struggling, Mom admitted. But together we can fix it. No, I said, pulling a folder from my satchel. Together we destroyed it. I slid the printed email across a crate that doubled as a table. The header blazed, March 19, 2023. Subject cancellation of catering contract. Dad's face drained of color. What is this? The message Caleb sent to West Shore Grand, I answered. The one that erased $850,000 in revenue. My proposal, my work. All gone because he wanted to prove he could outgrow me. Caleb stepped forward, voice trembling. That's not the whole story, I cut him off. It's the only story that matters. They had come to beg for my loyalty, but what they got was truth they could no longer bury. Later that week, the dining room filled again, this time not with drywall dust, but with executives from West Shore Grand and a few sharp-eyed journalists. The tasting table gleamed under borrowed light fixtures, plates arranged like offerings. Caleb stood at one end, hands slick with nervous sweat, attempting to plate his imitation of my award-winning dessert. He forced a grin as he presented it. My take on the king crab tangerine glaze experience. Forks clinked. A pause. Then subtle grimaces. One executive leaned back unimpressed. Overly sweet. Texture inconsistent. Then my turn. I unveiled the dish I had perfected over a decade, the glaze bright balanced with citrus, the crab tender enough to yield under the lightest touch. Silence fell as they tasted, then a hum of approval rippled through the room. This one of them said simply, "Is the flavor we signed for." The verdict was swift. The partnership belongs with Chef Olivia Morgan. Applause didn't come, but the judgment hit harder than any ovation. Caleb crumpled against the wall, the words spilling out before he could stop them. "I can't replicate her food." His mask, polished for years, shattered in an instant. Reporters' scribbled cameras flashed. My parents' shoulders sagged under the weight of public humiliation. They had bet everything on him, and he had failed spectacularly. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Justice had spoken for me. When the guests left, I walked to the wall where the copper sign leaned its letters, catching the late afternoon sun. With steady hands, I lifted it into place. Olivia's hearth. Behind me, my parents stood, silent dust still clinging to their shoes. On opening night, the glow of Olivia's hearth outshone the dying embers of the restaurant that had once defined my life. The copper sign gleamed above the door as candles flickered inside, illuminating brick walls reborn from dust. Guests poured in, old regulars, new faces, industry watchers, each one carrying the same hungry anticipation. I moved through the dining room not as a shadow in my brother's story, but as a leader in my own. Daniel commanded the kitchen with calm authority, his voice steady over the sizzle of pans. Marcus's scallops arrived on ice that morning, Eleanor's tomatoes bursting with late summer sweetness. Plates left the pass like music, each dish carrying the heartbeat of those who had refused to let me fall. The reviews came swiftly. A soulful rebirth of Northwest cuisine. An experience built on authenticity, not algorithms. Reservations filled weeks in advance, then months. By December, we were booked solid through New Year's Eve. I felt the weight of exhaustion again, but this time it was paired with exhilaration, not despair. Meanwhile, Riverside Ember stumbled through its decline. Dad had mortgaged assets to secure bridge loans. Yelp clung stubbornly to 3.2 stars with comments sharp as knives. Cold fries, soulless menu. Where is Olivia 3? More weddings canceled in November, each bride demanding deposits back. Caleb retreated further into silence, his promises of scalability reduced to dust like the floors I'd swept clean months earlier. Then February arrived, ushering the annual ceremony of the American Culinary Federation. I stood beneath dazzling lights, nerves taut, but spirit steady. The MC's voice rang through the auditorium, Restaurant of the Year, Olivia's hearth. The applause hit like thunder. I climbed the steps, copper gown, shimmering heart heavy with gratitude. The award, cool in my hands, was whole, unbroken. Not a fragile glass trophy, but a solid sculpture that carried weight. I looked out at the crowd, Daniel beaming, Marcus raising a hand, Eleanor wiping away tears. My parents were somewhere in the audience too, faces lost among shadows, their pride muted by regret. I spoke into the microphone steady. This is not my victory alone. It belongs to those who believed in the power of craft, loyalty, and fire. It belongs to my team. The critics later called it the speech of the night. One headline read, "Passion outshines. Prophet Olivia's hearth proves true excellence cannot be scaled." After the ceremony, as the ballroom emptied, I returned to my office. A plain envelope lay on my desk. Inside was a resume. Caleb's. I traced the lines of his work history titles, inflated achievements hollow. My hands shook not with anger, but with the weight of choice. Outside, the city lights glowed against the window, reflecting back at me like twin flames the fire I had built and the ashes he had left behind. Olivia studied Caleb's resume. Sometimes the hardest question isn't whether to forgive, it's whether to trust again. Betrayal had stripped away her home, her title, and her family's trust, yet from the ashes she built something stronger, a legacy that could no longer be stolen. Justice did not arrive quickly, but when it came, it shattered every illusion and left truth standing unshaken. As the world saw her rise, it was clear that when injustice is met with courage, the verdict can echo through a lifetime. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth. Perhaps standing up today means never bowing to injustice tomorrow. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment your thoughts below. Type 1 if you truly felt her fight for justice.